We are back with this session of Into the Motherlands. I don't know that I said the title of this at the top of the show, and I just realized that. Anyway, we're doing Into the Motherlands. We are back now, and where we left our adventurers, they had diagnosed the problem in the back of the ship with the water storage containers. There were sort of two compounded problems. One was that there were cracks in the outer containers that are holding the water that this whole mission is about. Just to remind you all, they are headed to the planet of Hathaway in order to deliver some much needed water. And then once they're there, they're also going to have a look and see why the irrigation system on Hathaway is malfunctioning. So the outer tanks of the water that they are transporting have cracked and are leaking. So that's one problem. But the other problem that Invicta managed to diagnose while she was looking through the computer systems in the cargo hold is that for some reason, there is another crack deeper in the hull of the ship that is siphoning exhaust from the engine room into these water tanks, increasing the pressure even as the water flows out of them. So there is a delicate balance now that the crew has to sort of figure out with sealing the water cracks, sealing the engine cracks, and making sure that everything gets taken care of in the correct order. Right before we left, however, there was a bit of a tense moment between Silent 919 and Invicta. And Invicta, what did Silas say to you that upset you right before we went to break?
She called me weak.
Yeah. And Invicta had a very clear, very immediate, very strong response to that. And so Invicta has decided that she is going to go and assist Bertrand in the engine room. And as she storms from the cargo hold to the engine room, takes her a little bit to get there. And she begins thinking and ruminating and feeling feeling the feelings that Sila 919 never wants to feel after that comment. So, Invicta, where does that send you? What memories does it bring up? What are you thinking about?
Thinking about training with others, training with non-Hyonal blade keepers who often would shove me down or treat me as if I was just playing at being a blade keeper, telling me to go back to my dusty books.
Yeah.
And when I couldn't always win in training or combat, calling me weak, saying that, I should go back to the lab.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all comes flooding back. And in fact, the specific moment that sort of comes flooding back, as it were, is that you have just completed a particularly grueling day of training. And you have it well, I don't know. You tell me. How did the day before this training go? Was there a lot of this getting shoved down, getting told to go back to the lab, all of that sort of thing?
There was a lot of failure that particular day. It was one of those days where Invicta couldn't do anything right. She missed feints and parries and wound up on
Mm.
her, on kind of the flat of her back in the training ring, and there were people laughing at her for that failure. And it was one of those days where she really considered just kind of giving up.
Yeah. Yeah. So after that, things always look at least a little better, or I should say, maybe a little more objective after a good night's sleep in the morning. And you have given yourself a rare day off from training just to sort of recenter, think about what's going on. How are you going to spend this day off from training now that you've decided to give yourself that bit of a rest?
Kind of having a not great day, sleeping in way more than she normally would. Invicta would normally be kind of up with the sons and out in the yard training and things like that. She would sleep in and kind of eat her feelings actually, knowing she's going to
Yes.
burn it off probably the next day in training, but just you know not really caring about what she's stuffing in her face or the fact that it's very early as she enjoying some fine Vitoan wines.
Ooh, yes, absolutely. A little bit of day drinking, a little bit of sleeping in. I love it. Yes. So we find Invicta then in her home in the city of Ha-Lins in the Katam region. Did I get that right? Yes, the Katam
Yes.
region of Vatoa, we'll call it. We'll call it now, since that is the original Hyanol name for the planet. Katam is a primarily, and again, when we talk about the regions of the planet being primarily one culture or another. Obviously, it's not exclusively that culture. All of these regions are fairly cosmopolitan in terms of who lives there. But this was a region that was originally settled. The cities there were largely founded by the Hyanol. And Ha-Lins, we have actually, I think, maybe mentioned a little bit about before, but Ha-Lins is one of the primary cities of the Hyanol. And we find Invicta in her home there in Ha-Lins. From I think there's a little balcony outside of one of the rooms of your home, and you can just see you can. Where are my notes on this? Here we go. You can just see the archives here in
Mm.
Ha-Lins. It is sort of the most obvious and most impressive building here in Ha-Lins in this city, and it is the. I'm a little bit stalling because I can't find my notes on it. Ha-Lins. Here we go. Got it. The massive archive of Primatbe. We've mentioned this before. This is an archive that is dedicated to trade skills and crafts and creation. And you can just see the spires of the archive in the distance from your balcony as you, take your time getting up, getting some fine Vitoan wine, and having your decadent and much earned and deserved breakfast.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things where it's like, huh. And she even has a moment of regret, like I should be training, I shouldn't be sitting here stuffing my face. But as we all know, eating your feelings is a time honored tradition.
Doesn't matter what planet we're on. It's a thing.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, as you sit there and resolve to eat your feelings today and let that be what it is, and you can sort of deal with any fallout from that the next day, your eye just happens to uh, catch sight of the dagger that you have with you at all
Mhm.
times. Um, and just sort of is there reminding you both of your place as a blade keeper, but also of the history. You talked a little bit when we created, I think, if I remember correctly, about where this dagger game came from. But what kind of thoughts does it bring up in this moment as you spot this sort of storied memento dagger that you have?
As Invicta looks at it, she feels some guilt and she feels as if she's letting her mentor down because she fought really hard to get there. And in that moment, she just definitely feels like she's letting one bad day set her back. She just feels like she earned those taunts of being called weak if this is how she responds to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Even sort of knowing what our brains are doing can be tough to get out of that spiral. So breakfast continues, and there is uh, there is bustle outside your window. The city of Hollins continues to sort of go about its daily rituals and whatever. Even as you sit here and sort of reflect on where you are and how you got there and why you're there, and as you finish up your breakfast, uh, there comes sort of the next decision moment of your day, which is, of course, now that you have at least partially eaten your feelings this morning, or perhaps this early afternoon, depending on how much you slept in. Uh, what is the rest of the day going to look like, knowing that it doesn't probably is not going to include physical training, and could very well just be you hanging around the house if that's what Invicta feels like she wants to do. But I don't know if it is. What do you think the rest of the afternoon is going to look like for you?
She's gonna actually go through some of her books on blade history and the things that her descendants learned from the Misalians when they met,
Ah,
because a lot of the technology that she grew up using was a fusion of what the Misalians kind of brought from their ancient ways and was raised up with what the Hyeno learned and what they invented. So going back and kind of thinking about who she is and actually trying to make a decision of, does she still belong there? Should she
yeah,
stay?
yeah. And you do. I mean, any high null that has even a passing interest in the scholarly, you have books and books and books and books about all different topics. Although I suppose yours would largely be focused on weapon craft, weapon use, all of these sorts of things. And you begin sort of pouring through them and doing that study. But at some point you sort of realize, and this is not an uncommon sort of discovery for many studious Hyanol, you discover that everything that is in the books that you possess in your home about this topic, just about everything is stuff that you've read before. And there's always value to a Hyanol in rereading and restudying and re-examining things that you've learned before, but it maybe isn't quite scratching that itch today because uh, these haven't provided answers to that question about whether or not you belong before. And it doesn't seem likely that they're going to this time with just the books that you have here. Um, so, what do you do?
She flips through a lot of these books. And it's kind of like when you've read a book and you've read it a lot of times and it's comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just not what you want to read in that moment. She goes through all these books and she goes through kind of half-heartedly picks up a couple blades thinking she might go practice after all and puts them right down, and she wanders around the house just looking at everything and wondering, why don't I just kind of pick up and leave first thing in the morning? There's not a lot for me here, and clearly I'm not good at being a blade keeper.
As you sort of pick up and put down these books and walk around and reflect in this way, there's a sort of, I don't know how else to describe it, an official sounding knock on your door. It's not, it is firm and confident and exactly 3 solid raps, like very, I don't know, official.
And that kind of has her on alert, but also because she's already in this bad place, she's thinking they're going to officially kick me out of training. That's where her brain goes. And she straightens up, figure at least if I'm going to go, they're not going to see me cry while they do it. And she pulls the door open just a bit. Can I help you?
On the other side of the door, you see standing there at the door, sort of straight backed and as official looking as the knock sounded, a Solansi man. So this man stands a little taller than you. And his skin is a dark sort of green color, like the very bottom layer of grass and moss in a heavily canopied forest. His hair are lighter green vines that fall in essentially dreadlocks behind his back, and they're tied loosely behind him. And growing from one of the vines just above his left ear is a single jet black flower that sort of somehow accentuates the officialness of this individual. You notice that, like most Salansi, at least the most Salansi that you have encountered here in Katam, you see that he is barefoot, and his finger and toenails are well groomed, but they're a striking sort of light brown, and they look almost like tree bark. As he brings his hand down from the knocking position, and his eyes, the sclera, the white, well, the white part of your eyes in him is a green color, and his the iris is a bright yellow, and he looks as you open the door. He nods and says, I come as a representative of the organization known as Torch. I seek a Hyanol named Invicta. Is she here?
You're speaking to her.
Ah, excellent. I have been sent to discuss with you a possible employment opportunity with Torch. Would you be amenable to speaking with me?
I suppose. Pardon my manners. I wasn't expecting anyone to stop by today.
Not at all. And he sort of looks around, and you can see he's sort of peering into your apartment. This will perhaps seem a somewhat random question in this moment, but Invicta, how well lit is your home?
Normally it's pretty well lit for someone who is a great cat. But today, because she was not having the best of days, there's maybe a couple wall sconces lit, and because she is a great cat, she can see just fine.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like that. I'm having a bad day. I'm a blanket burrito. No one perceive me.
Yep, absolutely.
As she finally got out of bed and had this luxurious breakfast. So she's so it's a little dim.
All right, yeah, and windows drawn, all of that, or curtains drawn, rather, all of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
you can see him sort of looking past you into your home, and sort of doing a bit of quick calculation in his head, and says, I do hate to be a further imposition, but would you mind terribly if we took a walk and spoke outside?
Well, if you wish to hire me, wouldn't that be more of a private conversation?
Uh, Indeed, it would, but and he looks around at the bright sunlit streets of Hollins, and he sort of he looks almost a little sheepish, and he says, I it, well, and as you see him sort of stumble and feel a little awkward, you realize that this Salansi individual, and Salansi come in all shapes and sizes, and their unification with the plant side of them is different for everyone. But you can tell that this one, for whatever reason, and it makes sense, he's very green. Clearly, there's a good bit of photosynthesis that he does to sustain himself. He is obviously uncomfortable with being that far from the sunlight for any length of time, and is just trying to figure out how to sort of say that without being like, oh, but I'll get hungry.
So he's basically like, look, I'm gonna need some sunlight to have this conversation.
Yeah, pretty much. But like he's trying to be official about it. Like he looks like maybe he's a little younger, maybe he's a little newer to Torch, and he's trying so hard to continue to be sort of you know, official and proper about it, but he really doesn't want to go into the dark.
She gives him a bit of a smile. Well, you've caught me on a day off, but there's no reason I cannot be hospitable. I can certainly open some drapes and light a few candles if you need it.
He smiles and looks relieved and says, that would be very, very much appreciated.
Well, I do have some manners.
I'm sure you have more than some. Clearly.
Depends on who
thank
you
you.
ask. And Invicta actually, like, you know, pulls open drapes. I mean, because normally she does keep like lights and stuff on. And so, she even like she's got like almost like a bay window that she sits in to read when she is normally off duty and not having a bad brain day. She actually pulls those big drapes open.
Hmm.
And so as she does this, her living space is flooded with light.
I love it. I love it. And so does he. Uh, if you invite him in, or when you invite him in, he will gratefully sort of hurry to that great flood of sunlight that you've unleashed in your living space. Excuse me, in your living room. Um, and he'll pull out a little tablet and make a few notes and pull up some files and says, "Well, if you are ready, we can get right to the interview, the conversation."
Certainly, if you don't mind, I'll start some tea. And forgive me, would you like water, or is there anything else you would
Water
like?
is perfect. Thank you very much.
You'll forgive my manners. I've only known a few salons in my time.
We are somewhat uncommon here in Hollins. It is no concern. I appreciate your willingness to ask.
And I will go make some. I'll put the kettle on and get him a lovely jug of water.
Yeah, and he will appreciate that, and he'll sip it periodically. And once you're all settled, he or you're both, because all two of us are settled, he will, tap again on the tablet and say, "Excellent. Well, let's begin. As I said, I am here on behalf of the organization known as Torch to ascertain your ability to participate in a special operation on behalf of my organization. If you don't mind, I would like to ask, what experience do you have on a ship's crew?"
I have done some exploratory and training missions. They
Excellent.
have been short, just to our moons, but I have ventured into space, yes.
Excellent. Have you any particular experience with any of the following crew stations? Captain, navigational officer, communications officer, engineer, and other.
Engineer, communication, and other
Excellent. Would you mind detailing the other, even just briefly, so that I can make notes?
weapons.
Ah, yes. Next, what experience do you have with engineering and or mechanical repair? You've already mentioned some experience with ship engineering, but what about repair for mechanical issues?
Well, I am a hyena, and despite the many blades you may see around here, I do enjoy tinkering and taking things apart. And one of my degrees is in basic space engineering and hyperdrive mechanics.
He looks suitably impressed and makes notes and says, "Excellent. And if I may, are you wearing the Antera dagger? Do you have it on you?
Oh,
Like
of
you,
course, even in
yeah, I
home.
figured. I figured. So he sort of eyes that, he spots that and eyes it as he asks this next question, which is, and if you wouldn't mind, what experience do you have in combat matters?"
Would you like to know hand to hand, bladed pistol, or space combat?
Uh, Goodness, any and all that you have experience in.
My spaceship combat is the least experience, but mostly because our missions were training and we did not have live ammo. Hand to hand, I am proficient in both long and short blades, and also with pistols and other rifles.
Excellent. Well, if you'll just give me a moment. And he takes a few more notes and waits for a moment. And you can tell that some sort of message is received on his tablet. And he smiles sort of broadly and says, "Excellent. Well, if you are amenable, Torch would request that you report to Torch HQ in 3 days' time. Transport will be provided to the headquarters, and all details about the mission you have been hired for will be given to you upon your arrival at HQ. Does this sound amenable to you?"
It does, and if it will help your organization, I'm happy to transmit my CV to you.
He says, well, absolutely. Torch seems enthusiastically on board with your joining this particular mission, but for consideration for future jobs and perhaps a permanent position at Torch, that would be most helpful.
Invicta actually slides a tablet over and just casually like taps a few buttons and sends her like 5-page CV to him.
He sees it and he sort of glances through the first page and begins to set his tablet down and then looks again and swipes to the second page, swipes to the third page, swipes to the fourth, finally swipes to the fifth, and eyes just sort of getting bigger and bigger and says, most impressive. I am sure they will be happy to receive this. And he taps and sends that off. And he puts the tablet away and he says, Invicta, if I may, um, we have concluded the interview. Offer of employment has been accepted, and so the official discussion here is done. I hope I'm not stepping over any sort of lines or out of place, but are you all right?
And she kind of just tilts her head like, I beg pardon.
He says, again, terribly sorry, and if this is incredibly inappropriate, feel free, and I sincerely apologize, but and he sort of thinks for a moment, and he takes a great big breath, and you can see the black flower that's coming from the vine, his vine hair, sort of expand with him as he takes a breath. Look, if I can be real for a second, this is not me from Torch. I don't know. I really appreciate you sort of taking the time to ask if I wanted water and to offer to open up the windows for me. And I don't know. I just want to repay you. And it seems like maybe I don't know. It seems like you're having a rough time. And I have to say, from what little I've just, and he holds up the tablet, what little I've just learned of you, I don't know. It's all pretty impressive. So I don't know. This is not me. Torch me. I just sort of wanted to say, I don't know. Are you all right?
And she actually glances down and thinks. And she actually rubs at the scar on the side of her muzzle that is lighter than the rest of her fur from the training accident. I'm an open book, aren't I? All those years of training.
He says, well, I mean, I definitely have some particular skills in reading folks. It's one of the reasons Torch sent me out here. But I mean, I know you can see really well in here, even in the dark, but the drawn curtains were a bit of a giveaway in my experience.
I can see why they sent you. And she hops up because the kettle starts to whistle. Mm-hmm. And she takes a little time to make her tea, and then she sits down and I just met you, but the fact that you even asked means a lot.
Says, look, like I said, I don't mean to overstep. This is
no, it's you're not overstepping. I don't. And she's trying really hard not to cry, because just that bit of kindness is something she hasn't had in a long time. And
go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
And she kind of stares down in her mug for a while, and it's just nice for someone to actually care,
He sort of shrugs, and he took one of his braids and sort of started playing with a little bit as he got a little more comfortable, and he tosses that back behind his shoulder and he says, I mean, look, like I said, I don't really know you, but I mean, everything we've just talked about is pretty impressive. Torch thinks, we should reach out to you for this particular mission. And I don't know. I've met a lot of people sort of doing this recruitment for Torch, and it takes all types, to run that organization and make it work. Uh, but I can't really say a whole lot about the mission itself. But I think the type of folks that they're looking for it, I don't know. If you're gonna go along with this mission, I think you're probably worth having a conversation with and worth checking in on. Uh, well, he sort of looks down and says, I happen to know a little bit about what it's like to have bad days. I don't know what your bad day is about, but I can tell you from my point of view, my abilities at reading people are really just top notch in terms of the job description, but it can be exhausting, sort of always being aware of the people and their emotions around me, and sometimes that weighs on me and makes me wonder, I don't know, if it's worth it to be out and about when I got to feel all of that. So look, like I said, I'm sorry, I'm sort of going on and on here, but my point is, I don't know what's going on. But if me asking can help even a little bit, I'll feel good about that. Sort of figuratively and well, literally, because if I can make you feel better, I'll feel better.
And if it wouldn't probably terrify this young man, she would actually smile, but a hyena smiling is kind of
Ooh.
terrifying. Um, did you? I don't think I even got your name. What is it?
He says, "Oh, of course. Sorry, I'm so used to doing the interview and back out thing." And he thinks for a minute, and he says, "Well, within Torch, we don't, especially those of my position, we don't often share our names, but I'm happy to with you." And he sort of smiles and nods at you and says, "Invicta, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Dami."
I'm very happy to meet you. And, you asked, and I might as well tell you. So maybe it'll help me feel better too.
Well, good, good.
It's kind of funny you showed up. I was actually thinking I should pack it up and quit, go somewhere else. Because yesterday was a day of all failure.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I've been there. I actually did pack up and leave. It's how I ended up at Torch. Wasn't what I was always doing. Um, Turned out for the best for me, but I don't know. Sometimes I wonder what things would have been like if I'd stayed where I was and sort of gritted my teeth and stuck through it. Could you do me a favor?
Sure.
Could you at least stick with it long enough to finish the mission I just hired you for?
Yeah, and if it gets me off the planet for a while, it'll be a nice little break.
There you go. Win-win. See, we're making progress already.
I like you.
Well, thanks. I don't think I've ever said this about anyone that I've interviewed for Torch, but I like you too.
Hmm. Well,
Hey, uh
yeah.
sorry, no, I just want to say maybe stick with it longer than just the mission, yeah? Uh no one is ever really going to know like what it's like to be you. You know what I mean? There aren't a ton of Solansi working for Torch, and so that sort of feels weird sometimes at work. And I bet I don't mean to make any assumptions, but I bet there's not a whole lot of Hyenols that are quite as combat experienced as you. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you know, it just means we got to work a little harder to prove that we can do it. Uh, but I don't know. I think you can. So if somebody ever tells you otherwise, you have them come talk to me.
Well, you know what it's like being one of the only ones. You got to work 3 times as hard to get half the notice.
Been there, done that. But at least in my experience, eventually, most people, sort of, are willing to be proved wrong eventually. Takes a lot more work for folks like us sometimes.
Yeah, it does. Well,
But hey, we can get there.
we can get there, and depending on what happens with this mission, if you stick around, you're always welcome here for some sunlight and some water.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. And I don't know, when you get back from the mission, look me up. Let me know how it went. And let me know if there's anybody that I gotta have a talking to for telling you that you couldn't do it.
Oh, if you could only talk to half my team. But that can keep for later.
I'll look forward to it.
As will I.
And the memory fades, and Invicta, sort of without realizing you've traversed the corridor all the way there, you find yourself in the engine room with Bertrand, and we're back on the ship and dealing with some problems. So let's go back to that.